Too bad.
Once again, a powerful tweet from the president taking on his former chief strategist. I don't really ever quote the New York Times if I can avoid it, especially Maggie Haberman, who's been in the tank for Hillary Clinton, I don't know, since she's been writing for the New York Times. But she wrote something or said something about this book that points out how off the mark and untrue this book is. Take a listen.
He creates a narrative that is notionally true, the conceptually true. The details are often wrong, and I can see several places in the book that are wrong. He gets basic details wrong. He has a history of telling people they're off the record and then disregarding that.
Right. So when you've got the New York Times on CNN, it's like double fake news alert. But in this particular case, she's speaking the truth that no one wants to hear, which is this is a gossip hearsay book that is meant to take down this administration, palace intrigue that everyone wants to talk about, as opposed to the accomplishments of this administration.
Yeah.
When in actuality, it's terrible reporting based on a lot of things that are just not true.
And CBS's John Dickerson had said a while ago that the media is ruining their own reputation. And I think that is true. And I think the coverage of this book really underscores that point. And the problem is there's no concern for facts anymore. Mm-hmm. The facts don't matter. As long as something proves a narrative that the media wants to believe, whether it's sexism, racism, whether it's Russian collusion, now President Trump is mentally unfit, whatever the issue is, as long as it proves a narrative that is a negative for President Trump, the media goes along with it. And we've seen that with ABC, Brian Ross's report that was so categorically untrue. You had CNN not too long ago right after that, messing up a major date, which, would mean something entirely different for the report. It didn't matter to them, though. They ran with the story because they wanted to believe the narrative, and the facts didn't matter. And I think we're seeing that with the coverage of this book again.
Well, now they're all psychologists who can diagnose the mental health of the president. Take a listen.
I think that Dr. Lee and other psychiatrists who've been up to meet with members of Congress have been predicting increasingly delusional and paranoid behavior on the part of the president. I think the president is dangerous and unable to successfully meet the powers and duties of office.
We interviewed Trump half a dozen times, maybe a dozen over the course of the year, and he would often tell the same stories over and over again. He both has these issues of mental fitness and then has these questions of intellectual capacity.
We know that Trump's father died after having Alzheimer's for 6 years.
We're going to talk about that because he's reportedly unraveling over this. Yeah. He's yelling at staffers. He can't stop watching all the bad press about him. He repeats these terrible things people say over and over again.
I didn't know Joy Behar was a psychologist.
Oh, and John Heilman, too.
I guess she has a degree I didn't know about. But
if you look at this book, as I haven't read it, but I was reporting on it yesterday, and, the gist of the book seemed to be that this revelation that President Trump and his team didn't actually want to win it. And a lot of interviews to that effect, clearly, whether he did or didn't, he certainly wanted it at the end, and now he's done all the things he's done in the past year, and we're talking about that agenda. But what's fascinating is the media's taking what they want from it, which is, the emperor has no clothes, i.e. he's now unstable. And it will be fascinating to see because President Trump has met criticism with blunt force time and time again.
And you raised the point last hour, and it's such a great point. Either he's mentally unfit and totally incompetent, or he's the mastermind of the greatest collusion of all time and an absolute genius. The media can't decide which one they want, and they go with the convenient narrative of the moment to take him down no matter what.
And I've seen a lot of folks bring that issue up on Twitter, and it absolutely makes sense because we've seen all these competing narratives, and they conflict with each other. They're contradictory, but it doesn't matter because it's whatever the narrative is of the day to try to undermine the Trump administration, to somehow pin President Trump as incompetent, as incapable of leading. And meanwhile, they don't cover any of the things that would prove that to be untrue, whether it's tax reform law that got done, drilling in Anwar that proponents have been trying to do for 40 years, repealing the individual mandate. Nowhere are we hearing about that. And then instead, they're running with this narrative about a sensational book that even liberal reporters are saying elements of it are untrue, but yet that doesn't matter. They're still running it as truth.
They can't, because they can't handle what this president has done, which is reset the agenda and sets the agenda every single day from his Twitter account, usually. Right. And so many in the left have taken to, and a lot of it centers around his tweets about North Korea, and he's got a nuclear button, and, it's bigger and it works, and Kim Jong-un's doesn't. Well, there's been petitions to Twitter to block the president's Twitter account as a reaction to that. So there's been calls online. Twitter responded to this idea that you would block the president of the United States Twitter account. Actually, very reasonably. Twitter said this. They said, blocking a world leader from Twitter or removing their controversial tweets would hide important information people should be able to see and debate. It would also not silence that leader, but it would certainly hamper necessary discussion around their words and actions. Once again, from the left, if they don't like speech, rather than engage it or debate it, they want to try to shut it down. Kudos to Twitter to not.
Who, by the way, real quick, did not mention President Trump by name.
I mean,
just to
didn't